Greetings from Fernbrook Family Center. We are a mental health agency that serves children, families, and adults in southern Minnesota. And I am Haley Girardi. I'm the Family Engagement Specialist with Fernbrook, and I'm here thanks to the City of Kasson's Mental Health Initiative to talk to you about supporting our youth. So this webinar today is for anybody who plays an important role in the life of a child, a preteen, or a teenager. And that can include biological parents, foster parents, childcare workers, teachers, coaches, good family, friends, grandparents, you name it. And I'm going to be talking about a variety of strategies that you can start using today, if you wish, to help make change in the life of a child and support their social and emotional and behavioral well-being and development. So let's go ahead and get started. Make sure I'm sharing my audio because I will have a couple of videos to share. Here we go. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about positive, peaceful, evidence-based strategies that work. Now, that doesn't mean that these strategies are, easy magic fixes by any means. I'm hoping to give you a variety of tools to add to your parenting toolbox and trust that you know what is right for you. Also, I'm just going to use the words parenting throughout, but please know that whatever your role in the life of a child is, I'm talking to you. So I'm hoping that you could just have a variety of different tools to try and know what sounds right for you and your family. Trust that instinct. And also just asking that you have an open mind about these strategies because some of them are going to be different from the ways in which we were raised. So I'm talking today about positive reinforcement, rethinking discipline, effective commands or instructions, sharing power with our kids, and emotion coaching. A bit about myself before I talk about where this information is coming from. So I studied developmental psychology in a doctoral program with an emphasis on parenting science. And so what I'm talking about today comes from what I know of the parenting science literature. And briefly, this can include, observations of children and their parents, how their parents shape their behavior, how they talk together, how they support their emotions, these sorts of things, and then how their children behave in other settings and how those things are related or how those children change over time. This also can include practices that are based in randomized clinical trials, wherein in different clinics or research institutes or mental health agencies where children are being treated, clinicians will use, a certain type of protocol or kind of training program to teach parents certain types of parenting behaviors. And they will randomly teach half of the parents who are agreed to do this one set of parenting practices, and then the other half something a little different, or maybe just keep them doing as usual practice. And then they compare the two over time and they look for changes in child behavior, in parenting, in levels of stress and conflict and things like this in the family. And they can attribute that to the differences in what parents were taught and what sorts of practices they use with their kids. And then also there are studies that just follow children and families over time, through an entire lifetime, at least, childhood into adulthood, the lifetime of childhood as we're talking about it. And looking for changes over time and how parents who do more of, praising their kids, say, or showing a lot of affection or having really consistent rules and expectations, how those children then would look different from other children whose parents don't do that as much. And then also studies that look at what are the trends that we see, what kind of conclusions can we make when we look at all 50 studies in different areas of the country, in different types of children and families, from different researchers that have looked at the same sort of phenomenon, this relation between parental warmth and affection and child behavior with their peers, for example. When we look at all 50 of these studies that includes thousands and thousands of kids and families, what kind of conclusions can we make? And that's called a meta-analysis. And so the practices that I'm talking about today all have roots, all have been shown to be effective in predicting and supporting positive child social and emotional and behavioral development. I'm also talking to you today from my real life experiences in using these strategies, as well as using them with the children that I work with in a clinical setting, or mental health setting, and strategies that I myself have taught to parents and caregivers as well. Okay. One more bit about this. So what we know, generally speaking, are from these decades, and I'm talking about 5, 6 decades of scientific research and parenting science, shows us that children who are well-adjusted, they're kind, they get along well with their peers, they perform well in school, they can follow expectations, they're independent, they're happy, these sorts of things. They experience, we can look at a few different kind of patterns that we see in what they experience in their families. So a major one is a secure attachment to their caregivers. And what a secure attachment basically means is that children can rely on their caregivers, on their parents. They know this, they can trust them to meet their needs. There's no doubt in their mind that their parents are there for them to meet their needs, and to be there for them when they need them. And they also feel safe and secure in their presence. If there's something that's upsetting, they're able to be soothed by them, and they feel good in their presence, and they're able then to go out and explore the world because they know that they can come back to their caregivers for any reason. Okay, so that's what secure attachment looks like. Secure attachment is formed over the first year of infancy, and a secure attachment can look different between one caregiver and another, and it's really dependent pretty heavily on a caregiver's behavior and responding to their child's needs and being warm and sensitive and knowing what is going on with them. And also, it's pretty stable over time. The attachment styles is stable over time, whether it's secure or insecure. It's going to remain that way throughout childhood and beyond, and even then relate to relationships with romantic partners into adulthood. The caveat to that is if there is some sort of major intervention, an attachment relationship can be changed, like through therapy, for example. But generally speaking, it's very stable, and secure attachments are very good and relate to very positive outcomes for kids. We also know that parents who display high levels of warmth and affection, lots of expressing of care, as Search Institute calls it, as well as high levels of structure. So having consistent, predictable rules, limits, and consequences. With those things in combination together, that's called authoritative parenting, and that is related to positive child outcomes as well. And the last part here, relationships or developmental relationships, as Search Institute calls it, that support children's development. They include expressing care, as I mentioned, challenging their growth, that has to do with rules and limits as well, knowing that, like, hey, I know that I can hold you to this high standard. I believe that you can do it. That's why I'm going to have these expectations in place for you. Also providing support for them, emotional support, support when they need help doing something, sharing power, which is a section that we'll talk about, and expanding their possibilities. So doing stimulating things that's going to help them to thrive and continue to learn and grow. Okay, so all of the practices I'm talking about today are going to work toward these major aims and help to support them. So we're going to start with positive reinforcement. I'm going to argue today that I want parents to use more positive reinforcement and less punishment. So what do I mean by that? So positive reinforcement is a kind of a classic psychological term. And really, it just means following a desirable behavior, something that we like that another person is doing with a desirable response. If we follow when we see somebody doing a desirable behavior, with a response that they're going to like, it's going to improve the likelihood that they're going to repeat that behavior. So this is a basic classic psychological phenomenon that has been replicated in lots and lots of studies, including animal models, which is where this idea came from originally. But of course, we're talking about kids today, and it's true in studies of kids as well, that when kids are positively reinforced, such as by using praise, which is what I'm focusing on today, it's going to be more likely that they're going to repeat that behavior in the future. And it has to do partly with activating the reward centers of their brain. So positive reinforcement can look like praise and giving positive affect, smiles, that sort of thing, as well as privileges or rewards. And so positive reinforcement, as I mentioned, it kind of started with animal models. It comes from the work of B.F. Skinner, and it comes from something called operant conditioning. And that is just associating a voluntary behavior, a behavior that somebody or something is choosing to do of their own volition, and some sort of a consequence. And a consequence can be positive or negative. In this term, we're talking about positive reinforcement. So the consequence is something desirable, something they want. So in the case of this rat, this lab rat, there was a lever in the box. It's called an operant box. It's just a little box that researchers can watch. They can record, they can track their movement, all sorts of things that kind of don't matter today. They press the lever, they get food. And once they continue to do that over and over, they realize that pressing the lever will give them food. It's positively reinforced. And so they're going to press the lever more so they can get more food. Okay, punishment is the thing that I'm kind of contrasting positive reinforcement with. So what is punishment then? Well, punishment is following an undesirable behavior. Oops, I have a typo up here. An undesirable behavior with an undesired or an unpleasant response. This is going to decrease the likelihood that that behavior will repeat. This can include yelling at our kids, scolding them, using spanking or corporal punishment, giving them labor to do, removing privileges, that sort of thing. So this could then look like the rat presses the lever, and instead of getting food, they get a shock. Okay, that would be punishment. And then they're going to learn to not press the lever, right? So why am I focusing on positive reinforcement and not punishment? Well, first of all, research does suggest that positive reinforcement is more effective in changing behavior, especially long-term and especially in humans, than punishment. Especially if positive reinforcement is paired with inductive reasoning or just talking to kids and teaching them what is the reason behind that important behavior. What's the effect on other people? How is it helpful? How does it support the greater good? Why do we want that behavior? And I'll get into more of that in a little bit when I talk about rethinking discipline. Using positive reinforcement just feels good for kids too. It can relate to higher levels of self-esteem. And it also can increase the quality of the parent-child relationship when there's a lot of positive regard. It feels good for everybody. It feels a lot better for everybody than a lot of punishment. Okay. So a lot of times in parenting training type of programs, in these interventions that are evidence-based and where I'm drawing a lot of this information from today, for example, these programs will start with really focusing on increasing the positive reinforcement and not necessarily focusing on the consequences just yet. And usually when we are facing a repeated behavior that it's happening again and again, it's frustrating for everybody, right? And a lot of times these negative experiences, the conflict, the tension, the nagging, these sorts of things can start to outweigh the positive stuff. And it's easier to become more burnt out as a caregiver, to become more frustrated, to expect and look for the negative in your child and just wait for them to do that wrong thing again, rather than the positive. So a lot of times when we are finding that we're very frustrated with the child's behavior or fearful about a child's behavior, and that, we're worried about what might happen when they start to do it at school, or if we don't get a handle on this, then what, these sorts of things. a lot of times it can be helpful to just take a step back and focus on what is the behavior that we want to see. And that can really change the game. So that's one reason why I'm focusing on positive reinforcement first. And also, what's wrong with punishment? Well, we do need consequences, and I'll get there, so don't worry. But really, when we focus on punishing a behavior, we're really bringing attention and bringing focus and spending a lot of time on what not to do. A lot of times, it's very common for parents and teachers and coaches and etc., grandparents, to punish behaviors in the hopes that, okay, they're going to know that's wrong, and so they're not going to do it anymore. But we've never taught them exactly what we want them to do. Maybe they're lacking the skills. In a lot of cases, that's the case. A lot of times that's the case. So when we just focus on punishing the behavior that we don't want to see, we're really just focusing on what we don't want to see and not what we do want to see, right? We also, if we're punishing a child again and again and again, it can start to weigh on their self-esteem. If we're punishing in a way also that is very shaming, if we're saying things like you are bad or you are naughty, then we can start to increase feelings of shame. I mean, feeling guilty about something that you've done, that's a pretty significant feeling, and it's something that can help shape our behavior and our internal motivation. But shame is something different. Shame is when we internalize that message and we think that there's something wrong with us. And so if we're punishing our kids a lot, we really got to be careful about that. It also can result in children just being better at avoiding punishment. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're not doing that thing that we don't want them to do. It means that they're better at not getting caught. So that can happen. And of course, we can see how all of this can harm the parent-child relationship and trust and that sort of thing. Okay. So I'm focusing on praise. How do we do that? It really can be pretty simple. I'm going to give some specific, if you're already praising and you're interested in other ways that this could be more effective, I'm going to talk about that. But basically, it's pretty simple. You want to be able to watch for the behavior that you want to see. So you could perhaps set a goal that each day you are just going to pay attention to one specific behavior that has really been a problem. What's the opposite of that behavior? So let's say it's yelling. Every time the child doesn't yell, that's something to praise. Thank you for using a calm voice. Okay, so you would watch for that positive behavior that you want to see. So you could think of just one behavior, like I said, and watch for it the whole day and focus on praising it. You also could, if that is obviously way too much for somebody to do, you're working at home, you have other kids, whatever, you could just set aside a specific time. Maybe it's meal times. Maybe it's, the morning routine, whatever it is, just a specific time to watch for that and really land the praise. You also want to praise a child right away after they have shown that positive behavior so that they can make that connection. And you want to be specific. There's nothing wrong if praise is completely foreign to you. If you grew up not being praised by adults in your life and it's something that you'd like to start, it's okay to start with good job, way to go, that's really nice, things like that. But it's even more helpful and effective if you're really specific about what they've done so that they can create that memory in their mind about what's good. We can also highlight the benefit of what they've done, especially focusing on how it was helpful, how it benefits them, how it helps other people. We do want to avoid praising internal characteristics. So this is fine to do sometimes, but we want to really focus on the behavior rather than, oh, you're a good girl, good boy, because then that also sends the message that if they're doing other things, then they're bad, right? So our behaviors are separate from us as people. We're good people, and we can make choices that sometimes aren't so good, right? But it doesn't mean that we're bad. So we don't want to send that message that behaviors equal who they actually are as people. We actually also don't want to praise every single time. Now, if we're really wanting to start to address a behavior that's been very challenging, we can be looking for it all the time to start with, but eventually we're going to want to be more intermittent with our praise. We're going to just want to do it, every third time maybe, so that kids aren't getting just used to it and habituated to it and don't really care about it anymore. We also don't want to mix in criticism. This is something that is pretty common, where we might say, hey, I see you cleaned your room for once. Or, nice, this time you actually, cleaned all the crumbs off the table. I really like how you put your shoes away. Why can't you do that all the time? It's really not praise. It's criticism disguised as praise. So we need to be careful with that. So here are some examples of things that we could say. I love that you listened right when I asked. That's so helpful. I can see how hard you're working on your math. Good for you. Thank you for waiting quietly while I finished my meeting. You really helped me out. You two are getting along so nicely right now. Way to go. When you shared with her, I could see how happy she was. You did that. Okay, these are some things that we can say. They're specific. We're highlighting a benefit. And here's kind of an easy formula for that to you. You can say you, we describe the behavior. So we describe the positive outcome. And then we can say something like you did it or good for you. This formula of sorts, I have to give credit to Dr. Becky Bailey from Conscious Discipline. So we can say, you put your plate in the dishwasher right away, so no one else had to. Good for you for remembering. That was really helpful. Okay. But we might have some thoughts right now about why we should be doing this. Okay, why should I praise my kid for something they're supposed to do? This is something that I've heard. This is a common thought. And to that, I would like you, if this is something that you're like, yeah, why should I praise my kid for something they're supposed to do? I'm going to ask, would you do your job if it was free? Do you get something out of the positive things that you do? And do you like positive feedback? So do your kids. Also, just take a minute to think of somebody in your life who was always there for you. Even if it wasn't a parent, was there some adult figure who was always in your corner, supporting you, encouraging you, and made you feel good about yourself? And did that include some praise? How did that feel? And just reflect on that. Okay. Something else that I've heard, won't praising and giving rewards spoil kids? If we do it too much, if we do it without having predictable consequences for breaking rules, established rules and things that happen if you don't, and there's no limits, then yeah. If there's only warmth and praise and rewards, and we don't also have the structure and the expectation for kids, then yeah. But I'm not talking about that yet. Okay, so you do have to have the balance with rules and expectations and limits. It's also helpful to praise their effort, whether or not they, completed something, or if they're, maybe they worked really hard on a project, they got a C or a B. We can still really praise their effort. We can praise their strategy, their resilience. We can praise the behavior that they did, not them as themselves, right? That helps them to understand that, I get better with practice. It helps them to develop a growth mindset. And rather than a fixed mindset, I'm good or I'm bad at this. And it also can help them to, work through things when they're difficult and be resilient rather than entitled. So I get it. And again, don't praise every little thing. Okay, and that can help if this is something that you're concerned about. Another question, especially I'm thinking about, teachers, what about internal motivation? We want kids to be internally motivated to do stuff. And if we give too much external reinforcement and motivation, doesn't that interfere with them wanting to do things on their own volition? And it can. So we need to continue to challenge kids and push them farther and to scale back their reinforcement when they're being successful and be really more intermittent with it, right? We also want to make sure that we can separate, praise and positive reinforcement as a, kind of behavior change strategy with just positive regard and making that unconditional love. Kids need that, right? We can also teach them skills for being resilient and gritty and not saving them when things get hard. And that's, praising their effort, that sort of thing. Another word about this real quick though, because this is something, a question that I've kind of been struggling with myself during the pandemic. So we want kids to be, motivated internally to do the right things, follow expectations that we have for them at home, at school, what have you. But right now, aren't we all feeling stuck? Like it's Groundhog Day, like we're lacking motivation. Right now, it's okay if we've never done a behavior chart with a kid and we kind of don't agree with it. Before they kind of just followed expectations, suddenly they're not. I wouldn't worry too much about messing with their internal motivation or wrecking it during this time. It's okay if a kid is struggling, if you're struggling, to kind of up the external reinforcement right now, because we all need it, right? It's just a hard time right now. So keep that in mind too. And another question that might have come up by now, so I'm supposed to just do nothing if they misbehave or just focus on, positive reinforcement? That can be a question that comes up when we're just focusing our work together, as a family with positive reinforcement first. No, we do need rules. We need limits and boundaries. These are so important. And really, they feel safe and predictable to kids. They need structure in their lives. Otherwise, the world is a very chaotic, unpredictable place. We also have to be consistent with our rules and expectations. And really, the consequences that we have, ultimately, they're going to be more effective in long-term change if those consequences actually teach kids stuff. Okay, so I am saying that we should have consequences too. So more about consequences that teach rather than punish. Let's get right into it. So natural consequences are fantastic. Natural consequences are what automatically, naturally, without anybody doing anything, happen when a child engages in a certain behavior. Sometimes it can be hard as a caregiver to let natural consequences happen, but they can be really effective. And of course, you wouldn't want to do something all the time if it's a continuous problem. But especially the first couple times, kids can learn a lot from just seeing the natural consequences of their actions. So, for example, if a kid isn't doing their homework, and you have this expectation to do their homework, and you have talked about it with them and they're still not doing it, well, they're going to get a bad grade. And if that's important to them, then that will be a consequence that they don't like, right? Not going to bed on time, they could be late to school in the morning. What happens if you don't fight with a kid in the morning and try to get them out of bed again and again? They're just late for school. Does that bother them? Does that have other consequences? Do they miss work then they have to make up? Not doing their schoolwork when they're at home or at school, well, they're going to have to work during their free time. That's a natural consequence. Or if they throw a toy across the room and it breaks, well, the consequence is to have a broken toy and we're not going to replace it. If they're rude to friends, they're going to learn that there's nobody to play with. But of course, with that one, usually we don't want it to get to that point, but we can help to highlight what the natural consequence would be. And then we can also have logical consequences. So these are the consequences that we are going to dole out. We're going to give to kids. But these are consequences that they make sense in terms of what they did. They're kind of maybe the opposite of the misbehavior. So if a kid does something unkind to somebody, maybe they can do a kind deed for them. One that I really like is if a kid slams the door, have a do-over. And that way they're practicing the positive skill that we want to see anyway. If they make a mess, they clean it up. If they break something, they have to replace it or fix it. And losing privileges also can work. If this happened in our home the other night, our kiddo loves to play with toys in the bath, like most kids do. He likes to have all of his animals in the bath with him, and he has these elaborate stories and scenes and everything. Well, he didn't pick up all of his toys, and he was tired and whiny and didn't want to. Okay, rather than getting in a huge power struggle about it, and threatening things that, you know, aren't related, like, if you don't pick them up, we can't read books tonight. If you don't pick them up, we can't have TV tomorrow. It makes more sense to, okay, if you don't pick them up, then we can't play with the toys in the bath tomorrow night, because then I won't be able to trust that you'll pick them up. So losing privileges is something that is very logical at times. We also got to be, as I mentioned, predictable and consistent with the sorts of consequences that we're giving. If we are very consistent, so if engages in this behavior that is undesirable, we have the consequence, that's going to be more likely to have to show behavior change. So one of the major pitfalls of when sorts of parenting strategies don't work, it's usually because of lack of consistency. And sometimes that can be really hard until you get over that hump, right? Predictability is also important for reducing power struggles. So if there's a rule that is always expected in this certain situation, and if it doesn't happen, it's followed by a consequence, then it helps, kids just get used to knowing that's the expectation. So it can reduce power struggles, it can reduce tantrums. Because if sometimes we do it and sometimes we don't, then whoa, now it's a big surprise and we have big feelings about it, right? So to work towards consistency and predictability, some things that we could do are to have a behavior contract or plan with our kids where we can sit down with them, we can talk about the problematic behavior, we can have a specific goal for that behavior each day of the week, and then earn an incentive for the days that they were able to show the positive behavior instead of the problem behavior, right? We can just have a chart where we use stickers, stars, smiley faces, whatever, where we can track over time that they're able to do that as well. And we can also just have rules and consequences posted so that there's no question about them. Also, I want to highlight that really the consequence in and of itself should be enough. A lot of times when we give out consequences, we're doing it when we're angry or frustrated or exasperated, and we might be giving it out in a very harsh tone of voice. We might include lots of criticism with it, and then it turns into a lot of shaming. And also, we just want the consequence to be the consequence, right? So avoid shaming, like, what were you thinking? You should know better than that. What is wrong with you? These sorts of statements, although we say them without really thinking about their effect, they can be very damaging to kids when they're hurt again and again. So give consequences when you're calm. Use a calm and a firm, matter-of-fact voice. If that's hard for you, I recommend practicing it. Okay, so we're already getting into talking about discipline. Let's talk some more about rethinking what we consider discipline. I'm going to argue that we need more teaching and coaching and scaffolding. What are those things that we want them to do rather than, as I mentioned, focusing on what we don't want them to do? So general guidelines are to calm yourself first before you discipline your kids, to go into situations having a plan, like kid didn't listen, you're walking up the stairs to go talk to them, know what the consequence is going to be, what's your plan B if they have a tantrum, etc. I'm also going to argue for supporting their emotions while you're setting limits. I'm going to tell you right now, that's probably going to be a tough one to accept. And that's okay, but just keep an open mind and avoid physical punishment. So I'm going to argue for not spanking your kids, not slapping your kids, not hitting their hand, not making them stand in a corner, stand outside in the cold, what have you. Okay. So here's a little bit about how you can go about calming yourself first, okay? A lot of times, if you're like me and your kid is misbehaving or showing a behavior that goes against your values, it brings up big feelings in yourself. And there's lots of reasons for that, including our own experiences in our childhood. Okay, so I'm going to play this video from Circle of Security to help understand a little bit more about why we might be so triggered or upset or feeling big feelings when our kids are showing big feelings or behaving in a way that goes against our values and what we expect for them. And pay attention to the metaphor of shark music. I think it's really powerful.
Parents. Throughout history, we've struggled to get it right. We hope we won't pass on our emotional issues to our kids, and we swear we won't make the same mistakes our parents did. We all have great intentions, but something seems to get in the way. Let's look at what that might be. At Circle of Security Parenting, we believe that being emotionally available to our children and their needs is the key to doing our best as parents. We call emotional availability being with. It means teaching emotional intelligence by being with our children in all their feelings, like sadness, joy, anger, curiosity, pain, frustration, excitement, and so on. Being with children helps them understand, trust, and move on from feelings. And knowing someone is with them in their feelings helps children feel less overwhelmed and more secure. Decades of research backs this up. For parents, some of this comes easily, but other times our children express emotions that make us uncomfortable, so we pull away or try to overrule their feelings, which leaves them on their own. We do this because our children's feelings can trigger strong emotions in us. We think of it like this: our history during childhood of how core people responded to our different emotions creates the background music for how we experience our children's feelings. Let's look at this example. This girl and her father have been enjoying time together in the park, but suddenly aware of the time, Dad says, "We need to go." When the girl hears this, she starts crying and gets increasingly angry. All at once, the dad's background music changes. The background music that is playing for the father right now, we call shark music. As it turns out, the dad's own mother was uncomfortable with loud displays of emotion, and she didn't know how to handle them. So throughout his childhood, she repeatedly told her son it was pathetic to cry, and she never ever asked him about his feelings of sadness or anger. His ability to deal with his daughter's emotion now is greatly affected by the experience with his mother then. Shark music. We're rarely aware it's playing, but it's our past experiences telling us to be afraid of or uncomfortable with a feeling or need that is actually safe. When our shark music limits our ability to respond to these feelings, our children learn to hide or feel ashamed of them. This is a problem because we're teaching our children to fear emotions that are actually both safe and essential in life. Most of us experience shark music with one emotion or another, and it's different for everyone. But whenever it is triggered, our ability to respond to our children's needs is limited. The good news is, by simply calling it by name and reflecting on what our children need in the moment, we can turn down our shark music. This is so important because if we can learn to manage our history of negative experiences and perceptions, we can respond to the truth of our child's current situation and be with them in it. Ultimately, this will help our children grow up with a better ability to understand and share more of the emotions they experience. There's no escaping it. Strong feelings are a challenge to manage as parents, but our children always benefit when we have an accurate response to what's happening, rather than reacting to the shark music we're bringing into the relationship. Remember, there's no such thing as perfect parenting, and blame never helped anyone feel more secure. That includes blaming ourselves. But the more often we can identify our shark music, the better off our children will be.
All right. So it can be helpful to take some time to be aware of your triggers. So what are the times that you find yourself most overwhelmed by your child's big displays of emotions or behavioral problems, these sorts of things? Being aware of them, thinking about them can help you know that when you see that behavior, you're likely to then recognize those feelings in yourself as they come about. When that happens, try to take some slow, deep breaths. A lot of times we respond automatically, kind of on autopilot. We just, we yell or we scold or we dole out a consequence right away. And there might be a better way to do it. So just take a minute. We don't always have to respond immediately when we see a child doing something, and we'll respond a lot more effectively if we can calm ourselves down a little bit. If we notice that in certain situations we get very overwhelmed emotionally, like flooded with emotions, it might be helpful to try a mantra. Like if your child is really sad or angry or crying, and you find that you are taking on those same feelings, we can tell ourselves, her feelings aren't my feelings. Her feelings aren't my feelings. Maybe we hear our kid having a tantrum in the room over, and as we're walking over, we're saying that mantra. Another from the Circle of Security Parenting Intervention, which produced the movie that we just watched, is bigger, stronger, wiser, kind. That's the role of a parent, to be bigger, to be stronger, in emotion, not physically, right? But also wiser and kind. This is one that I personally used when my kid was going through a transition. We had recently just moved. There were lots of other transitions in his life, and also developmentally. He was working some things out, and he was having a lot of angry tantrums, and I felt myself very triggered from them. And it was very helpful if I reminded myself, I'm going to be firm but kind by being bigger, stronger, wiser, kind. Or, in the case of maybe an infant who is crying, this will pass, these sorts of things. Pay attention to the present moment too, especially what's going on in your body. Doing some a quick mindful moment. So just paying attention to, instead of thinking about, as that dad did in the video, all the thoughts that he's having when the child is being, as he called it, disobedient. He was worried about other people watching. He was worried about how she was going to grow up if she continued to be disobedient, that she was going to grow up to be weak and all these things. Instead, turn that stuff off, turn off the background noise and music, and just pay attention to the present moment. And, how does your body feel right now? What is going on? My child is crying. I'm feeling tense. Just trying to boil it down to what is the most, simple, objective, non-judgmental thing that you can say about this present moment. And also take time to reflect on your parenting so that we can be purposeful about it. So why then is it helpful to calm ourselves before we discipline our kids? Well, like I said, we can be more effective as parents when we are calm. It helps to avoid further escalating the situation. How many times have you been in a situation where you respond to your kid doing something that you don't want them to do with anger and giving a punishment, or maybe threatening a punishment? They don't stop the behavior, you get more mad, and you give, the punishment, they still don't listen, you give another punishment, they still don't listen, so you give another one, kind of like that scene from The Breakfast Club, right? And then pretty soon, is the punishment so big that you can't even follow through? Well, then it's not helpful. Okay, so it helps to come into the situation calm so you can avoid this escalation trap. It helps you to also avoid too harsh parenting, like yelling. And of course, we all yell sometimes, don't get me wrong. But if we're doing a lot of it, then maybe it's something that we can think about calming ourselves first. Using physical punishment usually happens when parents are angry, and we don't want to do that. We can risk actually harming our kid physically, and of course there's also lots of emotional reasons why we shouldn't use physical punishment. And it also sends the wrong message. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. It's good for the relationship with your child and your attachment when you can show that you can be the calm, secure, safe place. Even when you're feeling upset, you're sending good messages. You're modeling to them that you can be the source of support, and you're bigger, stronger, wiser, and kind, right? It also gives you time to plan when you take some time to calm down, and you'll just be more clear-headed to be able to make parenting decisions that ultimately support your goals for your child. Okay, so one way of doing this is to ask what Daniel Siegel and Tina Payne Bryson call the three questions. So when your child is engaging in a behavior that you don't like, rather than responding right away, take some time to calm yourself, breathe. And once you feel calm enough, ask yourself, okay, why did they act this way? Why are they doing this? Why did they do this? And really try to think about it. What lesson do I want to teach in this moment? And how can I best teach this lesson? In other words, we're going to be reflective and purposeful in the way that we're disciplining our kids and not just reactive. So here's a little reflection tool as the other thing that I mentioned in our guidelines is to just reflect on your parenting. So I'm going to ask you some questions. Feel free to come back to these. Of course, this is going to just live on YouTube. You can come back to this at any time. But ask yourself, do I have a discipline philosophy? How purposeful and consistent am I when I don't like how my kids are behaving? If we haven't given this a lot of thought, our discipline philosophy likely looks a lot like how we were raised. Or it might be the complete opposite of it. Is what I'm doing working? Okay, so does my approach allow me to teach my kids the lessons I want to teach in terms of immediate behavior and how they're going to grow and develop as human beings? Because really that's the ultimate goal, right? We're our child's first teachers as parents. Am I needing to address behaviors less and less? So is what I'm doing actually helping to change those behaviors, or am I disciplining the same things over and over and over? That would be a good clue that what I'm doing actually isn't working. Do I feel good about what I'm doing? So does my discipline approach help me to enjoy my relationship with my children more? Do I usually reflect on discipline moments and feel pleased with how I handled myself? Or do I frequently wonder if there's a better way to do it? Do my kids feel good about it? Okay, so discipline isn't going to be popular, right? Kids shouldn't feel, good about misbehaving, right? But do they understand my approach and feel my love? I actually, the other day, I was kind of on my kid a lot about various things. And at the end of the day, I felt like I wanted to just reflect on him because, as the day went on and I was kind of in a naggy mood, I guess. He just got more and more upset about it. And I could kind of feel, a strain with us. We weren't having as much fun together. So at the end of the day, I said, I kind of was on you a lot today. And I was going to keep talking about it. And he said, I know, it's because you love me. He's 6. He got it, right? But am I communicating and modeling respect in a way that allows them to still feel good about themselves? Because our behavior is separate from who we are inside as people. Do I feel good about the messages I'm communicating to my children? Are there times I teach messages I don't want them to internalize? For example, that obeying what I say is more important than learning to make good decisions about doing the right thing. or that power and control are the best ways to get people to do what we want. Because when we do things like yell at our kids, shame our kids, spank our kids, we are really modeling through our behavior that this is what you do when somebody behaves in a way that you don't like. And research supports that that is what happens, that kids who receive frequent spanking, or actually it's kind of dose dependent, the more spanking a child receives, the more likely they're going to be physically aggressive with peers. And we're really sending that message, right? So does that work? Okay. Or are we sending a message that we only want to be around them when they're pleasant? Like, do we punish them showing anger or sadness by sending them to their room or putting them in timeout? How much of my approach resembles that of my own parents? So how did my parents discipline me? Can I remember a specific incidence of discipline and how it made me feel? Am I repeating old patterns, rebelling against them? Does my approach ever lead my kids to apologize in a sincere manner? So even though this might not happen on a regular basis, does your approach at least leave the door open for it? Or by the time that you're done with your scolding, or you've gone too far into shaming, are they so angry with you that they give you the cold shoulder for a day, right? Does it allow for me to take responsibility and apologize for my own actions? How open am I with my kids about the fact that I make mistakes? Am I willing to model for them what it means to own up to one's errors? Because really that's what it comes down to. Behavioral problems are really instances of kids either just, making mistakes. It takes a long time. The prefrontal cortex of our brain, which controls our planning, decision-making, these sorts of things, it's not fully developed until we're 25 years old about. Okay, so kids are gonna mess up a lot because they physically, biologically, neurologically don't have the capacity to be perfect, right? We mess up a lot also, right? So a lot of times kids just make mistakes. They forget the rule. They get wrapped up in something else they're doing. They're really motivated by their friends, and that motivation is kind of overriding their ability to make good decisions. That's the case with teenagers a lot. Okay, so a lot of times it's just mistakes, and so we need to remember that too. Other times it's a case of, if they're not doing it because they won't, they're not doing it because they can't, and we need to teach them what to do, right? But even when we lose our cool and yell, which we're gonna do because we're human, can we show them what it means to own up to your mistakes? How do you feel right now after considering these questions? And I just want to say, remember that you're doing the best that you can, and we're always learning. This being a parent or playing a major life in the role of a child, it's a huge responsibility. It's an amazing, beautiful responsibility, and nobody's perfect. But we can also continue to keep trying. Okay, so now on supporting emotions while we're setting limits. As I mentioned, this might feel a little controversial. This might kind of fly in the face of the way that we were raised. So stay with me. This looks like telling a child when they are angry and throwing a tantrum. Maybe we're talking about a 4 or 5 year old who is having a big angry tantrum and maybe trying to hit. We can say, I can see you are angry. That makes sense. I'm going to hold you until your body is calm. My job is to keep you safe. I know you're angry. You can keep holding that child. I know you're angry. I'm here to keep you safe. Once your body is safe, I will let you go. We still have a limit. We especially need limits when we're talking about physical behaviors with kids, but we still can support their emotion rather than saying, calm down, quit it, knock it off, okay? We can also say, we're going to your room until you have a safe body. I can see that's hard for you right now. You're allowed to be angry, but you're not allowed to say those words. Okay? We still can support their emotions. We're showing them that emotions are normal. Emotions are part of being human, but also our emotions are separate from our actions. Okay, we also want to avoid physical punishment, as I've mentioned. So really, what does physical punishment teach? You know, if we have the goal of improving our child's behavior, of teaching them how to be a responsible and caring, empathetic person, how does physically punishing them support that? So it's important to reflect on that. You know, what are we teaching? And really, there are unwanted side effects that come with physical punishment, even if you feel that it's really working, or maybe it's the only thing that works for that child. It really can damage the parent-child relationship. And these things that I'm talking about are borne out in the research literature, okay? It can lead to an inability or, great difficulty for a child to learn to understand and organize their emotions, to accept them, and to express them in a more healthy way if we're just punishing them. Can lead, as I mentioned, to increased aggression with others. It also doesn't help kids to internalize the norms and values that we're trying to teach them. And it can lead to feelings of fear and lead to an overactive stress response in the body if this is something that happens frequently, especially. And the overactive, if you're wondering about the stress response, check out their webinar on stress and coping. Because stress response, if it's turned on a lot and it's not turned off, or if it's turned on for a long time without being turned off, it can lead to really significant mental health and physical health difficulties. Okay, next is emotion coaching, and we can do this during discipline. So some of this could have went with what I was talking about discipline too, but emotion coaching in and of itself is a separate thing too. Really, I want us to approach big feelings as a chance to connect, a chance to support, a chance to teach. And that can be hard when we have our shark music, but it takes a lot of reflection and just, practicing it one day at a time, this sort of thing. Emotion coaching as a term comes from the Gottman Institute. And there are also really similar sorts of, same thing with a different name in the parenting science literature. Socialization of emotion, socialization of coping, that sort of thing. So the first step, and I'm really taking these steps from the Gottman Institute, is to show interest in their emotional world. So showing that you care about their thoughts and their feelings. We can do this every day. We really want to make this routine. We can do this by asking specific and open-ended questions like, what was the best part of your day today? Instead of just, how was school today? Good, okay, end of story, right? We want to show genuine interest when we are sitting down and having these moments with them that we're trying to learn about their emotional world. So we're gonna make eye contact with them. We can nod as they're talking. We're gonna match their emotion. We're gonna ask them follow-up questions like, tell me more, or what was that like, or what are you gonna do? We also can reflect back in our own words what we've just heard them say. That shows that we are actively listening to them. We also want to validate their experiences and their emotions, show them that it's okay, that's normal, that makes sense, and empathize with them. So that sounds hard, or I can see how upsetting that is for you, or that makes sense to me, I can see why you were so angry, or I can understand why you feel that way. That must have really stunk. I'm sad to hear this happen to you. Okay, these are phrases that we can come back to again and again that let our kids know that we're there with them. We can help them to label their feelings as well. So we might already be doing that. Instead of that sounds hard, we can then add, did you feel more frustrated or worried? Okay, or I can see how upsetting that is for you. We use the word upset a lot, I think, as people. I don't know if it's just generally speaking or if it's us as Minnesotans. I'm not sure, but I know the word upset is really frequently used among the people that I know. And then it's like, okay, so tell me what kind of upset. We want a specific emotion word so we can understand it better and understand what we need. So I can see how upsetting that is for you. It looks like you're feeling angry. Is that right? These sorts of things. That must have really stunk. Were you feeling really disappointed? So we can kind of ask questions if we're not sure what their feeling is. That's how we would follow up on these sorts of statements. We want to, again, I'm going to drive this home, want to avoid punishing and shaming their feelings. So we really want to avoid saying things like, go to your room if you're going to cry. Stop crying. Big kids don't cry. Don't be a baby. Quit being a scaredy cat. This is what I heard growing up. I'll give you something to cry about. Or no one wants to hear that. Emotions are part of being human. We have, all humans all around the world have the same basic emotions, and we have combinations of different kinds of more complex emotions. And they serve a purpose. They serve a purpose to keep us safe. And there's no denying that's part of being human. And emotions are going to come and go. And it's just going to lead for a happier, healthier life, understanding yourself better, other people, if you can understand your emotions. Okay. So a lot of times I think this comes back to the idea of shark music. We're going to punish or shame feelings if they make us feel big feelings inside that we find intolerable. So really think about that. What is the reason why we're sending kids to the room when they're crying? And what message does that really send to them? We also want to avoid ignoring or dismissing their feelings. Like, it's not that bad. Here, look at this. For a little kid, maybe we're trying to distract them right away. Or you need to get over it. I'm sick of hearing it. Or just look at the bright side. You have so much to be thankful for. What's the big deal? Why are you so sad? This also can not be helpful for them understanding their own emotions and figuring out what they need. They're coming to us with a need, showing us those feelings, and if we ignore them or dismiss them, then they're not getting what they need. Okay, so I have some examples of different ways that parents have responded to emotions, and I'll just comment on these after.
What do you say? Cambridge court does not play. Sally's got to do it, Kay. You're doing good. What? 6, 11, 8. Oh. Hey, what happened? Cambridge does not play. Listen, Miss Cambry, if we don't practice, there's a timeout room, and we don't want to go to the timeout room. I've had kids like this before. I know that, even though she's 3, I just have to show her who's boss. Who's going to do a good job and get a prize today? Are you going to get a prize? No. You have to practice. Yeah, okay, let's step clap, and then whoever does it is going to get a prize. Ready? Believe. Come on. Keep going, girl. Believe. Are you running fast? Okay, I have to do jumping jacks. I have to put you down. No. I have to do jumping jacks. Elise, are you for real right now? For me, I'm investing a lot of money for her to be doing these pageants, and I want them to do good at it. So they need to know that they're there to practice and learn and business when it needs to be, and then fun afterwards. Well, we have to practice or we can't be in the practice room, because when you're in the practice room, you have to practice. So do you want to practice or go outside where the babies go? Here, take her out in the lobby and talk to her. Okay. I just don't want her to think that she can sit in here and do that. Why are you being like this? Cambry doesn't let the girls, get away with stuff. She holds them accountable for their actions. I'm not going to. I don't want you to yell and throw a fit in here, but if we're at home, I'd be like, nope, time out. Yell and scream. Because at this point, it's not helping. Yeah. So I would just go put her in timeout and walk away from her, and if she cries, then she cries. You're going to need to come in here and you're gonna sit. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not. No, I know you need time out though. I'm sorry. She's kind of in like that three-nager stage right now. Like she can get really moody. But I think when it comes down to it, like she loves to be on that stage. So I trust Cambry. I see how her girls are successful. So she's gonna do great. Sorry, time out. Sorry, time out. I love you. I'll be right back. Sorry. There's a clock around here. Can someone let me know in 3 minutes?
Okay. So, my thought about this, the first thing is how confusing for that child. The mom clearly did not have a plan in how she was going to respond to the child's behavior and was back and forth in giving her different messages. So I could see how that would be very confusing for that child. And rather than helping her to organize her emotions, I mean, she was feeling some feeling that was getting in the way of her participating in that class, right? Rather than helping him to organize them, to me, it really led to her probably feeling lots more disorganization and confusion. So that's one thought I have about this and how that wouldn't be helpful. Of course, if this is a one-time thing, it's not going to ruin a kid, right? But if this is the sort of thing that happens again and again, then it will become a problem. I also think about, just developmentally, and if a parent could sit back and really reflect, and developmentally, that child's behavior is pretty typical. If a 3-year-old is not wanting to do that, maybe the 3-year-old doesn't want to do it. And, talking through that can be helpful, and just cutting your losses. And you can see how that parent must have had a lot of shark music, thinking about the money that the parent had put into these classes and that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, is it the child that wants to be doing that, or is it the parent, right? So just some thoughts about that interesting approach. Okay, give this a try as well. Give this a thought and see what you think about this. The caption is "Genius U.S. Dad Who Tricks Daughter into Not Crying."
So you want to cry by yourself?
Yeah.
Can I cry?
No.
So you just want to cry by yourself?
Yeah.
Okay, but I'm going to cry, so.
No.
Yeah, I am.
No.
Wait, hang on. It's my turn. Georgia, hang on. Do you understand? It's my turn. I'm going to cry. You're going to make me cry. I'm crying. You're making me cry. I can't take it. I'm so sad. Okay, your turn.
No.
No, go ahead. It's your turn. Okay, I'm crying again then. I can't take it. I'm so sad. Okay, your turn.
No.
No, go ahead. Why not?
Mommy.
You want mommy? You want mommy? So should we cry again?
No.
I'm going to.
No.
Can I?
Okay. So she stopped crying, right? Does that mean he's a genius and it worked? I mean, to me, I think how confusing, and you're making me cry. That's hard, right? We each have our own feelings, and we can't make anybody feel anything. Nobody can make us feel anything. Our feelings are separate from us as people. Other people have their own internal experience and feelings. That's something that kids need to learn too. And again, if this is like a one-time thing, big deal. But if this is the way that, they get the kid to stop crying all the time, then the kid's not learning to organize their feelings and make sense of them. The kid's not going to know what they're feeling. They're just going to learn to stop showing it, right? And it's not helpful. Okay. I forgot to put my source here for these direct quotes from the book, The Power of Showing Up. It's another Siegel and Payne Bryson book. But here are some other reflection questions in thinking about helping our child through their emotions. So when you experienced distress as a child, who was there for you? What memories do you have of a parent or a caregiver providing affection, calm, or empathy? If you received this type of attunement when you were upset, what aspects of it would you want to give to your kids? If this kind of nurturing was missing from your childhood, how did you learn to cope? Did you often remain upset until you cried it out? Did you learn to deny your feelings and ignore their importance? How do you handle your own difficult moments now? Do you have a difficult time returning to calm? Or are you more likely to experience big, intense emotions that take over, or more emotional numbing or shutdown? Do you have someone who supports you as you deal with them now? How present are you for your kids when they're having a difficult time? Are they left to deal with these difficulties alone? Like being sent to their room, put in time out? Are there times you get so caught up in your kids' emotions that you make them more distressed? What is one thing that you can do today to help your kids feel more connected to you, safer, and supported? Okay. Let's move on to effective instructions. Really, we just want to keep it calm, clear, and simple when we're giving instructions. A lot of times we see a big emotion or behavior after we've given instructions that kids don't like. So this is another way that we can help to change like these escalation traps and that sort of thing. Guidelines for giving effective instructions are to tell and not ask, to say what you want to happen, focus on the positive behavior you want to see, as I kind of already mentioned. Use few clear words, give choices, observe aloud, or try playfulness. So some of these guidelines or strategies can go together and some of them kind of stand alone, as you'll see. Again, all just sorts of different ideas. You can find what works for you. The first thing is to tell, not ask, okay? If we wanted our child to do something or if they need to do something, really there's not a question about it. So why are we asking a question? So rather than, can you put your shoes in the cubby? Put your shoes in the cubby, please. Or, do you want to fold the clothes for me, please? I heard this one a lot. This came from my own experience by the time that I was a moody, bratty preteen. I would respond to my mom by saying, no, I don't want to fold them. And I would wait for her response and say, but I will because I know you want me to, or I know I'm supposed to. I need you to fold the clothes. Or can you please stop yelling? Use your inside voice. So say what you want to happen, like that last one. Instead of don't pick up the cat, oh, this is one in our house. Don't pick up the cat, don't pick up the cat, don't pick up the cat. If we only focus on that, we're not helping to tell our 6-year-old how it's appropriate for him to interact with the cat. So you can pet her with one hand. No running. Walk in the hall so no one gets hurt. Leave her alone. Your sister needs space. You can play here or here. Okay? Use few clear words. We really want to avoid lecturing. This can be an easy trap to fall into, but they're going to just tune us out. The lecturing doesn't work. Save yourself your breath, right? Just avoid lecturing. If they don't listen, rather than going into a lecture, try being a broken record. So just saying that instruction firmly, clearly, again and again. Or we can use an if-then statement, which I'll show you in a minute. We also want to give one instruction at a time, especially with younger children, with children who are neurodivergent. One instruction at a time might be all they can handle. And we want to be really clear in what we expect. Okay, so one thing we might find ourselves saying a lot is clean your room. Okay, for a young child who has all of these toys, what exactly does clean your room mean? Okay, so we can help them to be successful in the request that we're giving, the instruction that we're giving, by saying, put away your blocks, let me know when you're done. Okay, they have one instruction, they know what to do when they're done. Then we can tell them to do the next thing. This also helps to avoid this task of cleaning their room look really overwhelming. There's no question also about what a clean room, should look like. What is it that we want them to clean, right? We're on the same page. We can say, put your blocks in this basket. Young kids can also really benefit from seeing that action and knowing exactly where to put things. And it helps them create an image in their mind along with that memory of what the expectation is. This might be an older kid's room. Rather than saying clean your room, we can say recycle your papers, then make your bed. And then there's no question about that. Another thing that we can do, especially if cleaning their room is a continual problem, we can talk about what a clean room is. We can have clear instructions printed and we can hang them up. And then they're there to reference, and we don't need to waste our breath going over and over and over them again. Especially with older kids or even with younger kids, we can talk about, where things go and what do they prefer and what does a made bed look like to them. These sorts of things give them some power, share some power with them. We also can take pictures of what a clean room looks like. And this is the same thing with any other expectations. What does a clean table look like? What does a set table look like? Where do your shoes go? These sorts of things. Having a picture of it and having it posted can be really helpful. Cut down on power struggles. Okay. We also can just observe aloud. This is a strategy I like to do to help cut down on being bossy, as my kid calls it, and just to cut down on power struggles, but also to help kids to make memories of those expectations and improve their ability to access them. So what I mean is, we're going to say, I see your shoes are on the carpet, or look over there at the rug. What do you notice? Or I noticed the dishes are on the table. Okay, this is gonna, as the kid sees that, then they're gonna pull from their memory what the expectation is. Okay, why is mom showing me this? Oh yeah, because the expectation is this. Okay, and that's good. They're gonna be able to remember it more often. We also can help them to understand, especially in social situations, if there's any conflict or things like that with other people, and there's an issue, we can draw their attention to what are those signs? What are those social signs that the person's giving us? Like if you have two siblings who aren't getting along, or one kid takes a toy from another kid, or is too close in the space of another kid, etc., we can say, look at her face. What is that showing you right now? Okay, or I noticed that she is frowning right now. Why do you think that is? Okay. This also works with our cat. Another thing that we deal with, our kid loves our cat, loves to pick up our cat. She doesn't love to be picked up, right? And so if he's being too much for her, I can say, okay, look at her ears. What are her ears doing, and what does that tell you? And then he makes the decision himself to put her down, rather than me nagging and saying, put her down, put her down, put her down. We also can try playfulness. In my experience, this can work on kids up until, through elementary school. And then you might not be able to get away with it quite as much. But using playfulness feels really counterintuitive, especially when we're frustrated. But it really can help the kids, as well as us as adults, move from that really frustrated, reactive place to being more calm and receptive and just being able to think a little bit more clearly. So this can include like creating whatever needs to be done into a competition. For younger kids, it can include pretend play or imaginative play. We can say something like, I bet I can finish these dishes before you put your toys away. We can say, whoever finishes first gets to control the TV. Or I'll race you upstairs when it's time to go upstairs. Or it's time for bath. What animal are you gonna pretend to be when you go up the stairs? Really? I'm gonna be a kangaroo. Let's go. Okay. Sometimes this is what we need to get through those tough moments. And of course, it doesn't work all the time, but you'd be surprised. Sometimes it really can work. Okay, if-then statements are also helpful. And then this helps them to, know very clearly what is the expectation and what is that potential consequence if I don't do it. So if you yell, then we will have to leave. If you throw a fit when it's time to go, then we won't go tomorrow. If you can't keep your hands to yourself, then I will pull over until we're all calm, but we'll be late. If you don't turn off the TV, then you'll lose your TV privilege tomorrow. Okay. Oh gosh, I have to go back one for a minute and give you another example of playfulness. So another thing that we do for playfulness is we challenge our kid a lot, and it works for him. For other kids, it might, like hurt their feelings or whatever. But for my kid, we're all on the same page. It works. So sometimes we'll challenge him and say, "There's no way that you can do that. Pfft, whatever. You're not strong enough to do that. You're not old enough for that." And of course, you could see how that might sound kind of shaming, but like I said, we say it in a very silly way, and in our house, it just works to kind of challenge him. And he likes to prove us wrong. The other night, we had some cleaning to do after a long week of work, and we all needed to pitch in. And I wanted him to take out or bring in the trash can, the recycling can, and to bring out our recycling. And of course, at first he didn't want to do it, and he was gonna, start to refuse, and it could be a whole power struggle. And instead, I playfully said, like, "Oh, those things are way too big for you anyway. It's okay. I can have Dad do it. He's so big." And he was like, "Whatever, nuh-uh." And he went right to the door and put on his boots and did it. And he was waving at us from the driveway and was so proud of being able to pull him in. So sometimes challenging kids a little bit like that can work too. Anyway, just had to share an example. Back to if-then statements. Okay, we can also use this to set up the positive reinforcement rather than, the consequence. So if you pick up 10 toys, then I will help. Or if you finish your homework before dinner, then we can have movie night. If you play without arguing, then I will join for 10 minutes. Or if you finish your chores, then I'll make a TikTok with you. We also can give choices. This helps to share power with our kids too. When kids have choices and they feel that they have control over their life, it feels safe. And think about for us too, when you have control over something, it creates a feeling of safety. Right now, this is something that a lot of us, we don't have control over a lot in our lives right now with the pandemic, right? So it's something that we kind of all need some more of, including our kids. When we give kids choices, we also can help to improve their decision-making, their self-regulation, feelings of independence and self-esteem. So all in all, it's great. When there's a place that we can give choices, go for it. So sometimes the choices are just forced choices, and that can be kind of a trick that works. Like you can brush your teeth or get dressed first. Which one's best for you? Or we can give choices to set the limits. You can hit this pillow or stomp your feet, but you're not allowed to hit me. Hitting hurts. Here's what we need to get done. You can choose when to do it. Here's the list of things that needs to get done this weekend. I trust that you're going to get them done by the end of the weekend, and I'm going to totally leave it up to you and how you want to do it. Of course, that would be for an older child or an adolescent. But giving choices and showing them that we trust them to make good choices that can be really important. Okay, so more about sharing power. Really, this comes down to taking our kids' ideas seriously and collaborating with them. So the first thing I thought of and thinking about sharing power is kind of the opposite of that, which is saying, because I said so. I'm making a unilateral decision because I'm the parent and there's nothing you can say about it. Sometimes this is appropriate. And a lot of times, as parents, we should have the final say, and that is very appropriate. But there's also a lot to be said in explaining the reasons behind our rules and our decisions to our kids. Why shouldn't they know, right? Of course, we're not going to explain every little thing, and that might just get into a power struggle anyway. But in a general sense, is there discussion about the family rules? Why we have these rules? Why we make the decisions that we do? We also can validate kids' feelings about the decisions that we make. Something I've kind of already talked about. So saying yes to the feeling that they're having, even when we're saying no to the behavior. And really, this is something else that might feel a bit controversial, but it is healthy for kids to express their feelings and their viewpoint, especially adolescents. Some amount of arguing is healthy. Not all the time, though, and over every little thing, but this is why it's good to be able to have some room for having discussions about these things. So here's what this could sound like in the moment. So a kid asks if they want to play Roblox. This is a game that's not allowed in your house for this hypothetical situation. But they really come to you again, they really want to play Roblox. Everybody's playing Roblox, why can't I have Roblox? You could say, so you'd like to play Roblox. Let me think about this. I might pause for a minute and say, well, we've talked about it before. My answer is still no. And okay, so you've talked about it before. Maybe you already shared your reasons. You don't need to say them again and again and again. Be firm in that your answer is no. And the child might then argue, plead, cry, whine, whatever. I know it's hard to hear no and not get what we want. You're allowed to be upset about it. And maybe that continues. I can see that this is hard for you. That makes sense. What's something you could do right now to deal with those big feelings? And maybe they say, I hate you, and stomp off to their room. But at the end of the day, you're letting them know you see their feelings. It makes sense. You're sticking to your guns and your limit about it. And that's it. Okay, you're not shaping their feelings. You're not dismissing them. You're not ignoring them. But you're still sticking to that role that you have. Okay, and just knowing that it's normal for kids to be upset when limits are set. I will say right here, this is from Dr. Becky at Home, this kind of script. She, I have her name listed later, but she has a lot of wonderful videos and scripts and such on social media. She's a psychologist. Okay, something else that we can do is to discuss problems as a family. So in the Gottman Institute world, they call this a soft startup. In other parent training kind of models, they call this neutral problem statements, whatever we want to call it. Bring up the discussion when everybody's calm and bring it up in a way that is not threatening, not blaming. Using I statements is really helpful here. Ask open-ended questions as you're doing it. You really want to listen to everybody's viewpoint, actually listen, not just think about what you're going to say next. Show you understand by reflecting back what they've said. Validate their feelings. Avoid criticizing them or bringing up history or making this, you never listen, those sorts of things. We're just bringing up one specific problem, okay? We want to restate whatever the limit is that we're talking about. Ask them to help solve the problem. And you can weigh the pros and cons together. Okay, so here's some guidelines for how to do that. And I'll give some more, examples. So this is what a soft startup or a neutral problem statement could sound like. I've been frustrated lately with how you respond when I tell you to do something. This could be at the dinner table, or they're in their room hanging out, you come sit with them, ask if it's an okay time to talk. And you say it in a really non-judgmental way. We also could say something like, we feel like at times been quite the struggle the past few weeks. What's up with that? And if you want to see some other examples of what this looks like, here is a link that you can go to. The Arizona State University Reach Institute has a family checkup, evidence-based practice program, and some other things that they do with families. And as part of that, they put out these educational videos. So there are lots of different examples of problem solving and bringing up problems with their kids, or parents with their kids. Okay, we also can negotiate solutions then. And we can even do this with really little kids. You'd be surprised. And during this, don't argue, listen to all questions, and really have everybody throw out solutions and write them down. That can be very helpful too. And there's no dumb solution. Don't criticize each other's solutions. There's just free thinking and brainstorming, right? And we can bring this up by saying, you have such good ideas. What do you think would be a solution for this problem? Maybe they've given an idea. I like your idea. I also wonder what would happen, with that idea after you're going through them. You could say, okay, let's call that option A. What are some pros and cons? All right. And I guess I have the link twice. This sort of problem solving technique is also something called collaborative problem solving. And here is an example of.
Hey Audrey, how's it going? Hey, I've been wanting to talk to you a little bit. I've been noticing that when we've been playing games with your brother, sometimes you seem really upset and you start to hit your brother. Can you tell me more about that?
Well, he's being mean to me.
So what is he doing that you feel like he's being mean?
He's purposely trying to make me miserable.
And what is he doing that you feel like is making you, what do you feel like he's doing that's trying to make you feel miserable?
He's teasing me nonstop.
And what types of things is he saying to tease you?
That I'm ugly, or that I'm not good at math or something.
Okay. And how does that make you feel?
Sad.
Sure. Yeah, that's totally understandable. So that's totally understandable that you are feeling really frustrated because he's teasing you. Is that kind of the problem? He's teasing you and it makes you feel frustrated, and so you just get so frustrated that you end up hitting him?
No, what frustrates me is that even though I keep on asking him nicely to please stop multiple times, and you say that if I ask him nicely that it will work, but it never does.
Okay, so when does it kind of get to the point where you end up hitting him?
When I've asked him 10 times in a row, and then I raise my voice, and then I ask him a little bit louder, and he still doesn't listen, that's when.
Okay, so you feel like it just gets to the point where he hasn't listened to you, you've asked him nicely, you've tried yelling at him, and just gets to the point that you hit him because you're so frustrated that he keeps making fun of you. Is that what's going on?
Yeah.
Okay, so I totally understand that that's really frustrating to you, Audrey. But the problem is that when I'm here, I want to be able to play games safely, and hitting your brother isn't safe. So I'm wondering if you and I can kind of brainstorm some ideas of what we can do when you feel really frustrated so that we can all play games together, but play safely. What do you think? Do you have any ideas of how we could do that? How we could play safely, or what you could do when you feel frustrated?
Well, he couldn't play with us.
Okay, that's one idea, that he doesn't play with us, but part of the time when I'm here in the summer is that we all play together. So I'm wondering if we could think of a different solution for when we all are playing together, but maybe we try to think of a way that to just help the situation when we're playing. Do you have any other ideas? No. Okay, well I wonder, do you think it would help you ever just take a little break from the game if you feel like he's just kind of keeps bothering you?
Sure.
Okay, where do you feel like is a good place for you to sometimes take a break when you're just feeling kind of frustrated? In your room. Okay, so do you think it would be helpful for you to just tell me that you need a break? Do you want to create a signal so that I know that you want to take a break? Or how do you want to let me know that you're feeling so frustrated you could use a break so that you don't hit your brother?
I don't know.
Okay. Do Do you like the idea of using your words, or do you like the idea of using a signal since you're so mad? A signal. So could we do like a, do you want to do something with our hands? Okay, so should we do like a thumbs up or a thumbs down or a thumbs in between? A thumbs in between, like I'm not feeling very good, I'm not feeling horrible, but I'm feeling kind of frustrated. I think I need a break to help my body. Do you think that'd be helpful? Okay, so we're gonna have a signal. So you're thinking that if when you get frustrated, you'll go like this, and that's gonna be my clue that you need a break. Does that sound okay?
Mm-hmm.
When you do that, how if I go like this? I'll give you a nod so you know it's okay to take a break. And when you go and take a break, I'll be sure to have a little chat with your brother so he knows too, maybe why you're taking a break, or maybe just ask him again nicely to just make sure he's using his words to encourage you, not to put you down and feel bad.
Okay, so this is an example of what they call it collaborative problem solving, and there's a whole training and everything on this. If you're interested, especially teachers, educators, childcare providers, feel free to Google it. But this also is just very similar to the type of discussion, negotiation, that sort of thing that can help kids to make decisions for themselves, to have their voice feel heard, to use their problem solving skills, flex those skills. And ultimately, you're there with them to support them and to help guide them. And, you can have the final say if needed, but you're really still involving them in the process. It also can be helpful once you try out a solution, to check in about it. Depending on how frequent that problem or that behavior is, if that's, check in the next day or check in the next week, that sort of thing, to see how it's working and, continue to talk about it and find solutions. Okay, the last part of sharing power that can be really helpful is to think about and kind of reflect on what do the division of responsibilities look like in your home? And also, what messages does that send? So is the division of responsibilities fair in the house? And is it working for everybody? Do the kids have responsibilities? Do they have enough responsibilities? Do they have too much responsibilities? Is it working for everybody? Does everybody have a chance to have their voice heard when you're talking about division of responsibilities, but also just, making decisions about the family, what household jobs or chores people might want to do? What are some activities that the family could do for fun? What do we want to do in our free time? What do we want our schedules to look like? And can everybody contribute? Because again, we want to support and challenge our kids to continue to grow, and by giving them responsibilities, we're really doing that. But also, we can share the power not only by physically they're sharing some of their responsibilities, but having the discussions about that and helping them to choose. So maybe that's making a list of here's all the chores that need to be done or the jobs that need to be done in our house, and here's the reasons why we need to clean. And everybody's going to pull their weight because we all contribute to a mess in this household, and so everybody's going to pick 3 jobs. Which ones would you like? That's just an example of how that could work. Okay, so we're going to wrap up our time here today. I'm hoping that you have found at least one of these tips or strategies helpful, intriguing, piqued your interest. Maybe there were also some tips, some strategies that I suggested that fly in the face of how you want to approach parenting, and that's okay too. But I encourage you, as I said, to keep an open mind about this and to give something new a try. If you want to talk about parenting challenges or your challenges as a caregiver, as somebody who supports youth, we are offering free consultations to residents of Kasson and the surrounding areas. So you can call Fernbrook Family Center at 507-446-0431. And we have free 1-hour mental health consultations. That's really like an hour of free therapy. So this really can be about anything. But feel free to give us a call. some helpful websites to guide you in making decisions about parenting. Childmind.org, the Child Mind Institute. It's a fantastic national research-based organization that also they provide clinical support and therapy and these sorts of things to families as well in the areas that they're in nationally. The Developing Child at Harvard is a fantastic resource for learning all about the ways in which our everyday interactions with our young ones helps to build and shape the architecture of their brain, which is very cool. They have lots of great resources. They have a podcast, NAMI.org, or National Association for Mental Illness. The Minnesota Association for Children's Mental Health, or MACMA, also has some great resources for family support. And the state of Minnesota, the health department also has some good mental health resources, especially in response to the pandemic right now. Tips on social are another really great way to kind of learn new strategies and just, think about them and be exposed to new strategies for parenting. And so, of course, there's a lot on social that we need to be wary of and thinking about, is it really trustworthy? But these are some accounts that I stand behind. Big Little Feelings, Dr. Siggy, the Mom Psychologist, Dr. Becky at Home, Child Mind Institute, Dr. Kelly Vincent, Fatherly, Mr. Chaz, and Teen Health Doc all have really fantastic, positive, peaceful sorts of practices that align with things that I've talked about today. I also recommend some reading if this is something that is of interest to you. So if you are an expecting caregiver or going to start working with young children, that sort of thing, anywhere through working and raising children through about age 6, these are some books I recommend. Raising a Secure Child. This is from the researchers and practitioners who developed the Circle of Security Parenting, which is one of the videos that we watched. The Whole Brain Child, Parenting from the Inside Out, and No Drama Discipline are all from Dan Siegel and colleagues. I've referenced this sort of information a lot today. There's a new one from the president of the Child Mind Institute called The Scaffold Effect. I also recommend Raising Good Humans, How to Talk So Teens Will Listen and Listen So Teens Will Talk, The Teenage Brain, and Brainstorm. And this is for children anywhere from school age and beyond through adolescence. All right. I'm back here. Stop sharing my screen. Okay, so that is all for our time today. As I said, I hope that you found something helpful in here for you that will work with you and your family. And I hope you all stay well and happy and healthy, you and your families. Take care.